what you're saying is don't do the centralization. Basically, bring AI to the devices. So the way I'm viewing this is that it's an agentic AI model for
Exactly.
network infrastructure, where you bring agents into the devices themselves, and so you can have local processing, local monitoring of the infrastructure, and then if it's SONiC, then and also if those agents are standardized, then you can also have kind of an agent of agent or an agent controller
That's right.
that is now kind of leveraging and accessing all of those different agents. So if there is, and so now network engineers can interact with that controller device, and then query it and interact that, and basically have give it tasks to go off and for it to inquiry across the infrastructure to find root cause. Vishal, how are you? Welcome to the Built for Trust podcast.
I'm doing good, Nick. How about you?
I'm really good. Yeah, I'm great. Been actually really looking forward to this chat. We haven't spent a lot of time within the community focusing on SONiC, and we're really kicking that off. Coming up in the spring time frame. So I'm looking forward to that. Also, we haven't talked in a while too, so
Yes.
have a lot to look forward to. So great. So let's see. Why don't we? Do you want to just dive right in and kind of start the discussion?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. All right. Great. So Vishal, I know you've been on the podcast once before, but that was during I think it was ONUC Spring or the AI Networking Summit
Yeah.
Spring last year.
Yes.
So I don't think we really got to really kind of explore a little bit of your background. So let's give everybody a sense of your career journey, where you've been, kind of where you're, what brought you to now being the CEO of Aviz.
Yes. Yes, definitely. So, look, I started my career as an engineer, in R&D, at Cisco back in 2004, and essentially started at Cat 6K, developing, hardware's SPA module for doing IPsec. Got lucky, essentially got to work on all the protocols which Cat 6K used to support, and of course, putting security on top of it. So that's where I started. Then, a couple of startup being in Silicon Valley, and then, in 2010 joined IBM. Uh, and essentially in IBM, I transitioned from the hardware-based networking to the virtual networks. So essentially, everything became from a hardware to as a service on the Bluemix platform. So a
Yeah.
good exposure there. Till 2015, I was essentially leading the engineering organizations. In 2016, I joined Mellanox in product management and on the technical sales side. Stayed there till after the acquisition was announced by NVIDIA, and really the Aviz Networks DNA goes back to the work, which the exposure which I have gotten at the time at Mellanox, essentially looking at what customers are looking for in parallel. Microsoft doing SONiC and everything, working that essentially worked for them. So enterprises asking for that, hey, how it will roll out for us in future. Essentially looking at something which is and the idea of Aviz at that point of time, which of course has evolved, was to make something which is equivalent of Red Hat of networking, which is data centric, and have the AI first mindset attached to it, because we
Yeah.
were very clear in when we started this journey that AI models and everything will come into play in networks as well. So that's a brief on my journey.
Okay, yeah, great. Thanks for that. Now, so quick question on the IBM side. Were you at Blade?
Yes, that was the
Okay,
Blade acquisition. You
okay,
got it
great.
right.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yes.
think that's where we might have first met.
Yeah.
At Blade, either there or Cisco in 2004. I'm kind of becoming an old guy all of a sudden. But anyway, so great background. Actually, it's really great that I'm a big fan of engineers being elevated into kind of executive decisions, and so really glad to kind of see that kind of career
Yes.
path that you've taken as well. All right, so great. So let's kind of dive in. So you know it's interesting, like the community that I kind of gather and convene is the open networking user group, right? So
Yeah.
open networking,
Yeah.
and we started that, back in 2012 or so. That's when white box networking was becoming really interesting. There were a bunch of options and choices, but the enterprise marketplace, the value proposition really wasn't there for them.
That's right.
For them, they viewed it, okay, it might have saved them like $1,000 on a switch, but it's going to cost them a lot more in all of the operational costs.
Yeah.
So that was a long time ago. So we're in a very different world, and the hyperscalers, really kind of utilized a lot of that, and they've kind of perfected it and developed it. And so now I'm viewing, and it'd be good to get your opinion on this, is that we're now at a different maturity curve in the marketplace and the enterprise side of it to really open up and adopt open networking. We had Parentap from eBay on kind of the last podcast, and so he went into like eBay's deployment and use of SONiC and kind of an open networking. But so I think that was really good. We know Target, is there. Walmart, is there. American Express, is there. So there's a lot of big companies now that are starting to like, focus on SONiC in particular around open networking. So that's why I'm kind of feeling that the maturity curve is different now, and there's actually an appetite and a high interest for SONiC. So I'm kind of jumping the gun. So why don't I first ask you, explain SONiC, for those who don't know, kind of what it is, and then really how we're now starting to apply it, especially as we get ready for AI workloads that are within enterprise, networks. Okay.
Yes. So look, I mean, I'll start, my answer with a very, industry well-known fact, which kind of starts with 2012, the open networking. So if you look at Gartner hype cycles between 2020, 22, and 23 and 24, in the hype cycle, the word open networking has been replaced by SONiC, right?
Mm,
So there is no open networking category now, that's basically known as SONiC now. So that's basically a testament to what you just said, is how the maturity has happened now. I'll dive into why and how this maturity happened, right? So SONiC is open source. Essentially, it's a microservices based operating system. The concept of something like SONiC has been there since the Linux has been there in a
yeah.
way, right? But really, if you see the open source, the kind of open source which tends to stick in the market are the open source which are developed and backed by the dominant consumer, not by
Right.
the dominant producer. Because if you have a dominant producer producing open source, it gets into the trouble of competing with the competing vendors, right?
Yeah.
But if you have a dominant consumer who spends a lot of money on that technology, is using it, that kind of creates an incentive for all the vendors to support it. So SONiC got
Hmm.
that right DNA. It was started by Microsoft. They are the
Microsoft.
dominant
Yeah.
consumer, so it will stay in market. They basically, if vendors have to sell, they have to basically support it. So that was the right foundational start. And the history teaches us, Kubernetes is around, Google made it, right? Kafka bus is around, LinkedIn made it, right? The technologies which were developed by the producers, they typically don't go that far. They fell prey of the competition. So
I'll go
that's,
even further back than that, like SNMP. The
yeah.
only reason why we have SNMP is that
Mhm.
there was a guy at MITRE who had like a $3 million contract, which was big. Like this
Yeah.
is like back in the kind of early 1990s timeframe. And he said the only way we're going to entertain any proposals if you basically support SNMP and you have that and you have to demonstrate it. It's
Exactly.
like yeah, it's the power of the purse on the consumer side is really powerful, but you need that anchor.
That's
So
right.
yeah, so Sonic had it with Microsoft. Yeah,
Exactly. And then it went into, multiple different places. But I'm talking about technology is technology, but then how and where the technology got invented and who is backing it and in what ways they are backing it in a total open source and a Linux Foundation and OCP ways. That's
yeah,
actually gives a very solid foundation. Now, after that, the second thing which comes in, customers looks for essentially, two dimension. Either they look for the cost saving or they look for standardization. Eventually you get standardized. If you do standardization, you do cost saving, and if you do look for cost saving, you have to standardize, right? So SONiC really, you have to see it in a way that this is the only open sourced operating system which is very comprehensive and inclusive. So pretty much all
Mm,
the ASIC vendors supports it, right? Just because there are dominant buyers in the market who will buy
yeah.
the ASICs and everything, right? Then it is very inclusive. The community is doing a great job to make sure that this is not going in 10 different branches, and the community SONiC is taken care, and the open source is truly available. I mean, really, the source code is available to be able to give a standard way of making an operation plane on top of it. Now, customers can do it by themselves, or they can use the standard tools, but the standardization is a big part which played in SONiC, because and standardization on top of very comprehensive and inclusive system. So that's the second
Yeah.
point. I'll make one more point, which is more commercial to your question, when you said that, look, you're gonna save $1,000, and then but you'll end up doing a lot more and all these kind of things. So what happened in from 2010 to 2017-18 is that when the standardization on network operating system happened, those operating systems were proprietary anyways, right? So the
Yeah.
savings were only on capex, right? So you basically have only hardware based saving. OpEx is still there because you will still pay for the license, you will
Yeah.
still pay for the NetOps tools, you will still pay for the support, and still the system is proprietary because you have a proprietary network operating system, right?
Right.
So the paradigm has changed now. The capex, of course, because of standardization, you can do that, and of course you can do way more than just simple standardization or whatever network operating system supports, because here everyone supports it, right? So capex is there, which basically got in. The second thing which happened in top is that OpEx is also got disrupted now. So you don't have to pay for network operating system licenses, and all you have to pay, it depends upon your appetite on how much you can support it in-house versus what help you need from outside, right? So
Mm,
truly, if you are spending $100, at $60 goes to hardware that was disrupted at the time of open networking, but remaining $40 also got disrupted now, right?
yeah.
So the TCO pie is cutting across the whole consumption model, and that's actually different in case of SONiC as compared to
Yeah.
other open networking solutions.
You see, I would even think it's even more than that, because it's like if you look at usually TCO, of networking, the hardware cost is usually only about a third. And when I mean hardware and and the operating system kind of bundle is about a third. And you kind of took that third and you broke it into 60/40,
Yeah.
right? 60 to hardware and 40 being the operating system. So so it was the other 70% that was of concern. But I think that concern starts to go away now
Yes.
because now there are so many more tools. You have standardization and you have so many add-ons,
Yeah.
to it. So you have a lot more options on how do you manage this infrastructure, which we didn't have,
That's right.
before. So I think it's like the whole 30% piece is now it becomes it's a stronger kind of value prop because we have the commonality standardization of
That's
ASICs, we
right.
have the standardization now of the operating system around SONiC, but now we have a lot of companies building on top of that. So
That's right.
let's
I mean,
right.
the
So
tooling, the skill sets, standardization in tooling, standardization in the skill set, future proof of the thing, which in the age of AI is very important. Workloads are changing very fast. So you
yeah,
have to have something which can change along with those workloads, right? And then supply chain issues. If one vendor cannot give, do you have a second vendor, right?
yeah,
And then open source control, that can I control my NOS? So those are all the levers, which is, by the way, just more than TCO. TCO is just one part of it.
yeah. Okay, great, awesome. This is great. That was I think a great context for everybody to kind of now understand where we are. So let's talk a little bit about okay, SONiC, not just for kind of existing kind of legacy data centers, but also clearly everyone is now focused on how do we now build and reimagine kind of network infrastructure to support AI workloads. So there's two things, right? There's the AI for networking, all
Yeah.
right. So there's the AI applications, So how do you kind of support that? And then there's networking for AI. I'm thinking SONiC kind of plays itself into that second category versus the first, but you have that actually tag in your tagline for a company. So why don't you first talk about those two kind of market segments and how Sonic kind of fits into that.
That's right. So let me start with networks for AI, right? So if you look at making networks for AI, it's essentially the prime trigger for thinking something different about these networks is essentially rooted from two different things, right? One is the compute definition is changing, right? I mean, it used to be CPUs. Now you are talking about GPUs, and you are talking about DPUs, and you are talking about edge inferencing and all these kind of things, right? And if you look at the product roadmap from AMD and Nvidia, the GPUs are coming at a very high speed, right?
Hmm.
So essentially, whatever you're gonna do, you will need a network to connect that, and that kind of puts a onus on networking. Said that yeah, you can keep on changing compute, but then the network will be impacted. So you need something which is very future proof. And which is not kind of logged in, unless you are looking for something like Spectrum X, which is better in performance in certain ways. But then you have front end network, because you have CPUs, right? And you have all other network things. So that's number one, right? The change in compute, that's what triggering it. The second thing is, let's forget the AI for a minute. Let's focus on the data,
Yeah.
right? Because end of the day, data is required, and there are multiple dimensions for the data, right? I mean, think about it. 10-15 years back, if you want to stand out of the noise, and deliver a message to your customer to convince market, probably you will need a 1 GB data. I'm just putting the number, right? 1 gig of data. In today's world, when you have AI generating content, that 1 gig goes to 100 gig, right?
Yeah.
Earlier there used to be text, then came the pictures, low
Yep.
thin pixel, then high pixel picture. Now you have video. If you don't have video, nobody even looks at you, right? I mean,
Yep.
so what it is translating into, it's actually translating into very high bandwidth, right? And this
Mm.
will keep on going. So AI is one reason why you have to relook at networks. Increased demand for bandwidth is another reason you have to look for the new network. So these are the triggers. Now, how SONiC works on it, right? So essentially, again, you basically have to have standardization done to be able to move fast and make your infrastructure future proof with a technology which is supported by pretty much all the ASIC vendors in the world, right? And that's where SONiC comes into the play, because it essentially future proofs you backend network or front end network, or basically the edge inferencing network. This is a technology which is all the vendors are working on. There
Hmm.
are, in pretty much every vertical, there are examples of the deployment, so trust is there, right? And you have the source code with you, so it's just not gonna you're not gonna logged in whatever way. So that's where it makes perfect sense. And it will coexist with the technologies which have better performance in some senses, for the AI specific solution, or campus specific solution. Those things will be there, and that standardization has to happen in the operating layer. So that's from the
Yeah.
networks for AI perspective.
Yeah.
Now look at AI for networks, right? AI for networks, the whole point there is you need to have the data to be able to make an AI which understands network, right? Now, if you really look at it, the current OEM who sells network, very good networks, by the way, they all have their own AI. But the problem with those AI is that works only with their particular deployment, right? So you
Yeah.
have vendor A, very good AI, but works only with A, then B and C and D, right? So how can you make an AI if the AI cannot understand your whole infrastructure like your
Right.
human engineer, right?
Yeah.
And that's where so brain can standardize, because brain understands it's a vendor A, it will work like this, vendor B, it will work like this. To make AI understand that, you have to standardize the data, because AI understands data, the model understands data, right? So you need to standardize data, and SONiC is a right way of doing it. Of course, you don't have to start with SONiC. You can start with normalizing the data layer first and then go to SONiC, right?
Hmm.
But eventually standardization will have to be done for the AI for networks. SONiC is providing you the NOS layer, where you can collect it from all different places and put it on the data normalization layer. So that's where essentially Aviz vision comes in, that when you make networks for AI, you should have standardization, which gives you choice, control, and cost saving.
Yeah.
You can start in either direction, whatever ways you want to start, you will get all four of that. And the same thing for AI for networks. You have to have standardization, and that's how you will realize the AI network assistant kind of thing, which will give you efficiencies and performance and everything.
Yeah. Okay. Those are two great, perspectives and really markets, for SONiC, and also how kind of we're starting to have to reimagine how we're doing networking these days. There's one thing that you mentioned. So I totally get the kind of the workload being the amount of data, that's being placed upon infrastructure. But there's something else that's going on, as well, and that is data gravity is going to start to shift, right? So, like, we've had data gravity before cloud. It was like everything was in the data center, right? So that was gravity around data.
Yeah,
Into cloud, we started to now have kind of two centers of gravity: one private data center, the other one is cloud. And then there could be multiple cloud data, gravities, depending upon how multi-cloud really you were. And I think now with AI is that that's going to multiply the
yes,
amount of data center, or not data center, but data gravity points. And the way that I
yes,
kind of think of data gravity, it's almost like it's a black hole that actually allows light to escape, right? So
yes,
it's like it controls traffic. Traffic needs to go there in order to service an application or service a request, what have you. And so there's a fundamental difference around how traffic patterns are going to be behaving. No longer east west, north south, all of that, that we've had before, but more Brownian motion kind of
yeah,
traffic patterns. And then also latency is going to be, I think, a little bit more difficult to understand and to predict. And so I think that's where having AI into the protocols themselves to try to manage how this kind of exchange of data behaves, and how does it meet the policy requirements associated with an application. So I think in that kind of context, are there tools within the SONiC kind of community that kind of deal with that? Or is this kind of a to be developed?
yeah. So look, I mean, Sonic community as such is a network operating system community, right?
Yep.
It provides you a network operating system which can work on you know variety of ASICs and variety of switch vendors and even on the DPUs and everything, right? Uh, so basically, it provides the standardization. So what it
Hmm.
means is that you can get the data in a standardized way and all these kind of things. Now, what you're talking about is something like, AI fog. We call it AI fog. You called it black hole, which
Oh. Mhm.
lets the light escape. We call it fog because light goes, but still you don't know where you have to go. So how does human behaves in fog, right? They just go to the nearest point where they can actually get their things done, and they don't want to venture too much into the fog because they don't know how long this fog is and everything. So if I translate that into the AI has to come to the data, right?
Yeah.
Data is basically in the fog, like you said, Brownian movement. Essentially, in fog, you will end up doing Brownian movement. It will happen, right? Because you
Yeah.
don't know what is the way there, right? So
Hmm.
that there's the right way of solving it. You bring the AI to the data in inferencing model and everything, but then when you bring it, you need the data standardized, and that's where Avis Networks, comes in. To actually build up all the tools which can take you towards AI and normalization of your data, and not only just network operating system, because you see a human engineer, they don't just do switches and DPUs. They do
Yeah.
firewall, they
Right.
do knowledge based documentation, they work with vendors, they look at internet, they do 10 different things. So data is not just on this layer, data is on everywhere, right? So you need to bring that data at one place, collect it, and bring AI to that data, because there is a
Yep.
fog out there or a black hole with a light escape thing out there. So
Okay. So I think so. I want to make sure we're clear. When you're saying data, you're thinking about system logs, traffic logs, all of the emitters that
yeah,
occur within devices, whether those are firewalls, switches, routers, or what have you.
yes,
Okay, great. So, because I think we've been interchanging data as like traffic, like real application traffic,
that's right.
versus like management, lifecycle management data.
Yeah,
Okay.
so look, I mean, the
Okay.
right way of thinking about it, Nick, is that think of a life of a network engineer,
Hmm.
right? Whatever they do, that and they interact with data in 10 different format:
Yeah.
application, traffic profile, protocols, syslogs, and various different devices. If you want to put AI on top of it, the AI has to get the data from everywhere. It's like very normal stuff. You have to copy a human way of doing thing and look at data, and then you basically go forward from there. So that's the way of looking at it.
Okay, great. So I have a model for you. All right. So the way that we did this before, which is really being done today, it's kind of like a haystack model. All
Yes,
right. And so what happens is that all of these emitters of data, they're kind of sent either SNMP or SFlow or telemetry data, APIs,
that's right.
and they get basically sucked out of the infrastructure and they're centralized into a data lake or into Splunk or into like
That's right.
Snowflake or what have you, right? And then something happens,
Yeah,
link goes down, performance goes down, and then all these network engineers, they're basically told go find that needle in that haystack.
that's right.
Okay,
Yeah,
and so it takes them a lot of time trying to get to root cause.
yeah,
What you're saying is don't do the centralization. Basically, bring AI to the devices. So the way I'm viewing this is that it's an agentic AI model for
exactly.
network infrastructure where you bring agents into the devices themselves. And so you can have local processing, local, monitoring of the infrastructure. And then, if it's SONiC, then, and also if those agents are standardized, then you can also have kind of an agent of agent or an agent controller
That's right.
that is now kind of leveraging and accessing all of those different agents. So if there is, and so now network engineers can interact with that controller device, and then query it and interact that, and basically have give it tasks to go off and for it to inquiry across the infrastructure to find root cause.
That's right.
I think
So
that's what you're saying, right?
that's what I'm saying. Essentially, if you see you have a haystack find, you want to find a needle, then you have to go through petabytes of data and everything, right? Typically, what happens is if you are looking for a particular troubleshooting or a particular task, let's say you have to generate an audit report for your thing, or you have to upgrade particular switches which are not compliant. It's a very specific job. You don't need the whole haystack,
Yeah.
right? You probably need 10% or maybe 5% of the data to do that particular job. So then the agent will know that, I don't have to look for everything everywhere. My context is defined, my devices are defined, and I'll
Hmm.
just go do that job like an engineer, a smart engineer will do, right?
Yeah.
So just because there is too much of data, you don't have to go through all of the data,
Mm.
right? So do it smartly, put it where it is required and the context which is required, and that's the right way of doing AI, because otherwise it's like it's just too much of data getting generated nowadays, right? So how do
Yeah.
you go through it?
Yeah. Okay, great. Excellent. Good. I think we're on the same page,
Yeah,
there. So so specifically with these, so kind of how are you participating within the SONiC kind of ecosystem?
yeah. So even we basically before we got funded as a startup and everything, we were in actually in SONiC community. So we've been in SONiC community for past 5 years now, right?
Hmm.
And we are basically helping, both in basically LF and OCP, to all the vendors, work very closely with them. We contribute code. We have created the Edge SONiC group, which brings the protocols for SONiC. So we do develop SONiC code, give it back to community. We do reviews coming from different vendors. We help in writing the HLDs and everything. So very much intrusively involved with pretty
Hmm.
much all the vendors in the community and daily activities community. So that's one thing, right? Second thing which we do is we in a very neutral manner, we bring the some sort of commercialization aspect to community by doing things like plugfest,
Hmm.
wherein we kind of bridge that gap, that you have a big community, you have big companies, their engineers working on that, but there may be a let's say a enterprise who don't have that many of people who go and sit in community. They need is that, okay, this is what I need,
Hmm.
can SONiC help me, right? So there is a gap in there. So that
Yeah.
gap we fix, because working in commercial side, bring those requirement, help fix that gap in community. So that's how we are enabled there. So the way I look at it is that we basically complement community to wherever between the gap of what the enterprises want versus what community has. So
Okay.
purely complementing it 100%.
Okay, great. Yeah, plug fests are always extremely useful, helpful, not only for the vendor community to kind of understand like how they can, if they and can they plug in, but also just it's a great show of interoperability and standardization, in the works. So, we're going to have a good showing of SONiC at the Dallas Summit, and really thanks to you guys, as well to kind of like been kind of educating, us and the community and to move that forward. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I think one of the big impetuses was a test, a multi-vendor test that you all did.
Yes.
You want to talk a little bit about that, and around because this was also like the test parameters and not so much the scripts, but like what is of import to test was really driven by the consumer community, the
That's
large enterprise marketplace. And I thought that's fundamental because that really just makes sure like what's being tested here is going to be useful for the ONU community to consume when they see it coming up in Dallas. So anyway, with that as the kind of preamble, yeah. So what did you guys go off and do?
Yes, so I'll just summarize Plugfest in three different bullet points. The first one is essentially it it basically creates a single yardstick of quality for all the options available with SONiC, right? What
Mhm.
it means. So how do we define that yardstick? We actually go to the end customers who are SONiC or who are looking for going SONiC or who may are not even looking to go SONiC in a year or so, right?
Mhm.
We ask them, what is the standard of quality for you from your network's point of view, right? How do you use your network? What is your failover numbers? How would the scalability you are looking for, right? And we bring that in essentially in format of automated test. So that kind of defines the enterprise quality yardstick, right? So
Mhm.
that's a big part of Plugfest is to work with all those different probables who are looking for SONiC and define that quality yardstick, right? And then once you have every test plan nailed down, you automate it so that it is a very consistent and predictive way of testing with the traffic generator. That's why Keysight came in, WWT came in, because they also have a lot of people asking for SONiC and everything. So this is how we created that yardstick. The
Yeah.
second part is we execute it and we basically develop a consumable guide. Now that guide comprises of the quality report, of course, the test results, and because the quality is defined by the customer, so of course they end up seeing what they look as quality. It's not a vendor quality, it's their quality, right? They end up looking at standardization, that okay, how many vendors options I have. And this report, the quality report, because it's a single yardstick, is basically done on the standardization. It also talks about migration recipes. It also talks about the TCO savings in end-to-end detail. And it also talks about that how the skill set migration can happen, right? So it's essentially a
Uh,
ready to consume report for the consumer. The third and the most important point from from the commercialization point of view, the customer who wants to look for SONiC, doing a SONiC proof of concept, and they are not getting time because I mean everyone is busy in their existing projects and everything.
yeah.
It basically provides them a quick proof of concept report on top of different options and vendors, and a starting point without even spending time on it, spending procuring the switches and doing a lot of work. It basically just provides them that report. So these are the three big things which we have been done in Plugfest, and we have done it in 2022. Now we have done it now, and we plan to do it at least two times a year, because now it's a very structured, repeatable and consistent automation is in place, and we have an ecosystem with vendors, so of course it's just doable now repeatedly.
Yeah, that's super. So it's both kind of like technology, product tests. There's also kind of economics, so kind of TCO,
Yes,
and there's also kind of design patterns.
exactly.
Okay, how do you approach it? What's the design pattern? What's the proof of concept kind of look like?
Yes.
So yeah, so those are usually don't see all of that. It's almost like a kind of a get started kind of kit.
Yes.
Like here's the test independent, testing. So you can see the interoperability, of the solutions. You can see what the design patterns are,
Yeah.
And you hope that one of those design patterns will actually resonate with your particular environment. And then there's economics, associated with it, and then there's also skills, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a pretty comprehensive thing. So yeah, I hope we can cover all of that, in the spring,
We'll
and so
try to do that.
yeah,
We are getting ready for it, and thank you for
yeah.
giving us a opportunity to present that.
Yeah, well, I'm excited for it. I'm excited for the community. This community has been working this for a good long time, and so now, like I said earlier, it's like the maturity model is now, I think, there, and so now it's really around education,
That's right.
and market awareness, and so we're happy to be a platform, for that. And so the more choices and options IT consumers have to solve these problems, the better. And especially like, in getting rid of the whole haystack,
Yes.
way of doing kind of life cycle management. I think, frankly, that's huge. That is really huge. That's one thing we should do at the summit. One of these days is actually have a live. Actually, we should do that, almost like what we used to do at Interop, where we'd have kind of a live kind of plug fest going on,
Yeah.
maybe not for spring, but maybe New York. We can have a live kind of
We
sonic
can
plug
try
fest
that.
going on.
And all the vendors who took part in Plugfest, they are all SONiC community members. They are our partners. They of course want to showcase their SONiC solutions. So
Hmm.
of course, I mean that is doable, and we can work on that.
That'll be great. So, every new technology has challenges. So, what are you seeing that still needs to be done? Like, where are people getting stuck, in their deployments?
Yeah, I think it's not of technology issues in
Hmm.
SONiC now. It's just essentially has been 8 years of runway on hyperscalers, and you mentioned some of the companies. So if they can do it, it means it works, right? And these are like Fortune 100 kind of companies. So if they are doing it, it means it works. Technology is fine, right? From the consumption side, there are certain objections which I have heard in past, right? So there are three, if I have to kind of mention them. The first one is essentially support. Everyone talks about that. Okay,
Hmm.
if you're gonna be community, then how I'm gonna support? Well, look, precisely that's why we started this company to start with, right? The support is not 1-800 number support. What we look at support is support as a software. You see, Datadog, when that came in, it practically removed the need of level 1 and level 2 support for infrastructure like compute and everything. That had
Yeah,
to happen in networking, and the reason it was not happening yet because there was no standardization, right?
yeah.
So we basically started with that, creating a software which does provide support, backed up by 15-minute SLA by the SONiC expert. So that is the first thing which customers look for. The second one, they look for that, okay, uh, i I want a standardized operation layer, right? Standardized operation layer means that if I get a solution from vendor A and vendor B and vendor C, and even though it is SONiC, there may be certain nuances by which the operation layer has to be standardized. And in some cases, the big customers, they have their existing standardized layer which was developed for the OEM vendors in the past, right?
Mm,
So how do you give a standardized layer in form of CLI, in form of API, in form of graphical user interface? So it basically catches the customer where they are in their definition of NetOps or standardization, right? So this
mm,
was another problem, which is basically why how we made our SONiC stack. So that's the second thing. The third thing is that how it can be community first ecosystem, right? Because you
mm.
see, when you have this open source, there are chances that it will stray towards the proprietary at some point of time. You develop one
Yeah,
feature and they say, oh,
yeah.
it's not in community, so now it become proprietary, right?
Right.
So this is the third thing, is that how do you keep it open sourced? How do you keep it community first, even though preserving the comprehensiveness of it and inclusiveness out of
Mm,
it, right? So that's what we provide, is essentially the source code will always be available, and that's why 5 years of community experience gives us a lever to make sure that things goes in community. Yes, of course, the pace can vary, on when it goes where and everything. But the source code from the community side has to be, at least on the SONiC network operating system layer,
Yeah.
has to be open source, and that provides the customer. So essentially three things: support, standardization of operation layer, and truly a community SONiC. These are the three things which on the customer side. And of course, some ask for TCO savings, that really it works and everything. That if you will double triple click, you will see the savings. It's essentially just or maybe look at Plugfest report that has the
Yeah.
data. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So it seems like, yeah, not exactly, but kind of aligned with the kind of a Red Hat model,
Yeah.
right? So it's, you guys are providing service and support, kind of the, for folks who need one throat to choke, it's like, on the operating system anyway, it's that, you guys can provide support, on there, and there's a community, of experts around SONiC that could help maybe debug, maybe, a thorny issue, that might,
Yeah.
that
Let me
has come up,
summarize it.
you know? Yeah.
A network operating system company without owning a network operating system, look
Yeah.
at it at that way, right? I mean, we own the SONiC community. We have the expertise. We can fix bugs. We can develop features and everything. But it's all community. That's not proprietary for us. We have other products, right? We have AI products. We have network visibility products,
Yeah.
and then SONiC as a support product. So those are the places where we enable the customer. But when it comes to SONiC, it has to preserve its basic DNA.
Yeah.
That's what we strive for.
Okay, yeah, that's great. And also, I'm really glad that you did mention, like, Aviz is not a Sonic pure play. It's like, you have other products in the networking space for
Yes.
sure. Okay, and I think I was just wanting to, maybe get your perspective on kind of future of networking engineers. So, to me, it's like the haystack issue is a big issue because that's really what drove so much administration and overhead,
Yeah.
for managing our infrastructure. So the way I'm viewing this is that, maybe level one engineers can go to level two, and maybe the level one, kind of activities are taken over by, agentic, and also, other forms of AI. So maybe what's your view on kind of the future role of network engineers?
Yeah, so look, I mean, for the future, right? Let's look at in the history how they evolved, right? So in like early 2000s, the gold standard was that you are CCIE, and you pretty much understands the protocols, and then you have a very good knowledge of the the CLIs and everything. In 2010 to onwards, it kind of changed into the Ansible playbooks, Python,
Right.
NetOps done in an automated way, and everything, right? And by the way, I mean, meanwhile the standardizations on the protocols were happening, right? I mean,
Yeah.
everyone started using BGP, leaf spine architecture become standard, and 10,000 protocols kind of came down to, let's say, 20 protocols, and you can make a network in that 20 protocol, right? So a lot of standardization, and because of that, a lot of open automation. Where it's going towards now is basically the data will be used to actually look at that what you want to do, and that's where the agentic AI comes in. The analogy of haystack come in, and you will still probably define the agents, you will still
Mm.
probably write the Python script, but then you will power it by AI. And how you're going to power it by AI? Because now AI has the capability to generate an Ansible playbook for you. AI has the
Yeah.
capability to generate a dashboard, a simple dashboard which you used to do in Grafana earlier,
Yeah.
right? And AI has the capability to take the data and convert in a specific workflow, right? So the network engineers have to kind of graduate into not only developing the automation, because you can use AI to develop the automation, is to essentially connect the AI with the right data sources, and think of it as a workflow by workflow. That's the agentic
Mm.
model essentially, right?
Yeah.
And that capability has to be built in all different you know n- the network engineers the the technology which they have to learn and everything. So it's going towards data first, it's going towards workflow first. So it started with CLI, went into automation, now it's
Yep.
kind of going in data first. So that's where it's going towards.
Yeah, that's a very interesting, perspective, around that and the data itself. It's like there is a kind of view right now in the industry that, um, that the way that we need to view and, kind of, network infrastructure is really from the point of view of data. I think most are referring to traffic data and not management data. And you're really kind of focusing, it's really around the life cycle management of this. And that is like, there's no way humans can deal with the deluge of the amount of system data and traffic data that's coming off of the infrastructure that tells you how it's doing and the health of it. And
Yeah,
that
look,
really needs a new
our
model.
so Nick, our thought process is holistic, right? I mean, look at the life of a network engineer. Maybe 60 to 70% they do firefighting. Maybe maybe 50% to 70%. But then they also 20-30% they have to work other things, right? They have to look for non-networking things. They have to look for the
Yeah.
historic data to find the patterns. They have to look at website that how much of their network is in compliance. They have to develop the documents, right? Audit reports and everything, right? So when you talk about AI, it cannot be just about, let me troubleshoot my network using AI.
Yeah.
That's like just one part of AI, right?
Mhm.
And then the AI has to, what if your issue is in firewall? Then what you're going to do, right? Your AI
Right.
will
Yeah.
work just only on the switches. How it will know about firewall? However, human is supposed to know that it is a firewall issue, right?
That's
So
right.
the AI also should know this is a firewall issue, right? And then
Yeah.
if your boss asks tomorrow that, hey, give me a capacity planning report by 1 a.m. night in my New York office, I want to know which applications were going. So how it will happen today, they will look at the traffic, they will generate a graph, they will put it in the PowerPoint, and then it will go to the boss,
Yeah.
right? The AI should be able to just do that. Hey, just can you generate a graph, right? So you see, I mean, it's a everyday networking has to be assisted by AI, which means that you have to holistically look at everything.
Yeah. We've got to do a whole bunch of demonstrations on this,
Yeah.
to show these dashboards, to show how the agents can be created in near real time, maybe with Claude, deployed, and actually see how it, the result.
Yeah,
All right. So
we'll
I
be
want to ask,
demonstrating. We'll be demonstrating this. We call it AI, network copilot. We'll be demonstrating this in the Dallas.
awesome. So Vishal, I want to like actually, I'm going to ask you now, and like, so that we something for us to work on. Maybe it's New York, maybe it's for next year, where we have kind of a live, kind of almost like Plug Fest.
Yeah.
And then how does that, get managed as well,
Hmm.
at the summit? I think that would be one, it'll generate a huge amount of interest and also a lot of enlightenment and education, for the industry.
That's
So
right. I
something I
mean,
want to work with you on.
yes, definitely. We have some ideas on there because, like I said, you asked the question future of network engineers. Though, so the AI cannot be a black box AI. It cannot be like a product like, okay, here is the AI, just do whatever. It
Turn
has to
on.
work with humans. So, whatever human developed artifacts are, and
Yeah.
the way every network engineer thinks about their networks, that has to somehow tie into this AI, because
Yeah.
every company is different. Financials are
Yeah.
different from the cloud companies, and let's say the federals are different from everyone else, right?
Yeah.
So there will be some special sauce which only network engineers will know of that organization, that has to integrate with AI, and that's the future. That's how it's going to be. It has to integrate. It cannot be like, here is the AI and it will do everything. Not going to
It's
happen.
great. Awesome. Vishal, this has been really, really great. I think this is a great spot to leave it, and I look forward to seeing you in Dallas we have like 8 weeks
Yeah.
in a few months or so. So it's really looking forward to seeing you there. And thanks so much for taking the time and being here.
Definitely. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Nick, for having me here.
You're welcome. Great. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for plugging in.